welcome to all of you to the Tibet Museum's bi-monthly talk series event that we are hosting. So yeah, the main thing that why we are hosting this kind of talk series is because the Tibet Museum falls under the Department of Information and International Relations, and particularly we comes under the division, the information division, where the information's the main task is to disseminating the information about the political and human rights and environmental condition inside Tibet to the Tibetan people in particular, and of course the world community at large. And that's why we are hosting this kind of talk series every bi-monthly, just to inform the people that this is happening to Tibet, something like that, the current situation, and then the past, Tibetan people, the suffering that Tibetan people went through. So that's why we are hosting this kind of talk series, and it is indeed my honor to have today. We have the guest speaker, Dr. Lobsang Yangtso, and then if I talk a little bit about today's speaker. And then Lobsang Yangtso did her schooling from TCV School and Tibetan Children's Village School, and then after that she completed her bachelor's and master's from the Stila Mary's College there in the Chennai, South India, and after that she completed her MPhil and then PhD from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, which is in Delhi. And after that, she did a lot of works at different various kind of organizations. And currently, she is she works as a program at environment coordinator in the International Tibet Network. And Madam also has published different articles in various journals, and also presented those at international and national level at various location. So that's how about today's speaker. So yeah, and then Lobsang will talk about her experience being there at the COP27 meeting held there at Egypt last 6th November to 18th November, almost 12 days. So she being there on representing the Tibet and Tibetan people. And she will share her what she experiences at being over there and the challenges that she faced. So I welcome to speaker, and please.
Thank you so much Tibet Museum for having me, and thank you everyone for coming as well. So I think today what I thought was I'll not speak much on what was decided at the COP27. But I think with the case of Tibet being at the COP27 is a case of how stateless people or occupied people or nation, what are the challenges that they face and what do they do at the COP27. I think so with the case of Tibet, I think it says a lot about that. And so this year, I think this year was my third COP. The first one I attended in Paris in 2015 while I was doing my studies, and then last year at Glasgow, COP26, and so this year was my third one. And so with the Tibet groups, so after COP26, so we formed a specifically campaign working group on Tibet climate crisis. And so initially we had, I think, almost around 10 Tibet groups working on the campaign on climate issue, and then I think at the end 5 Tibet groups could attend the COP27. And so we had from our Tibetan government in exile, we had a Tibet Policy Institute, Tundu Amula, and then Tibet Watch, Chukila, and then Kinzum from SFT International, and then Gloria from Tibet Justice Center, and then I represented International Tibet Network. And while we were over there, it's not So we went as a group, and so we also, when there is a lots of collaboration and working together over there, and we prepared a joint briefing paper, and so over there, so when we went over there, our main objective was to bring the case of Tibet in the global climate discussion, and then also highlight the human rights aspect in terms of climate change and climate crisis that we are facing in Tibet as well. And so initially we also had a plan to hold public events or panel discussions, but as I think you might know the situation inside Egypt, so we were not able to hold any public events or our own panel discussions specifically focused on Tibet, which I think we could did in last year in Glasgow. We hold our own Tibet specific panel discussion in Glasgow, and this year we couldn't hold any of the Tibet specific panel discussions. Then another objective that we had was to build a relationship or network or build contact with the climate activists or organizations, and so that was it. And so we had specifically three main demands. We're saying that first, to recognize the strategic importance of Tibet, and then also improve access and transparency in terms of scientific research on the climate issue on Tibet, and then how that impacts downstream nations. So we are asking for that. And thirdly, we also asked to have a more of a right-based approach when we do research on climate change, and then also focused on importance of acknowledging and recognizing the traditional knowledge of Tibetans in terms of environment protection. And then also we focused on inclusion of Tibetans in climate policy making inside Tibet, as well as in the global climate discussion as well. So that was our joint briefing that we agreed on. But my personal I think objective was that when I got chance, so I focused more on colonialization and specific on Chinese occupation inside Tibet, and I emphasized on saying that Chinese occupation of Tibet has further degraded the environment degradation inside Tibet, or the mismanagement of environment protection inside Tibet. And because I think when I was there at the COP, so I felt a lot of sense of not having a state or not having your own country or official representation, and how you feel about these things. So I always focused on saying that Tibetans do not have an official representation at the COP27. So we need an official representation. And why we don't have an official representation at the COP27 was because China has occupied Tibet. And so it's the Chinese government who comes on global climate discussions, where they represent us and then do the negotiation based on us. So I thought that, I think climate change issue or the global climate discussions are also very important in terms of highlighting the decolonization, and then the emphasizing on the Chinese occupation as well. So over there, being a stateless, so what are our what can we do at the COP27 is that first try to focus more on the advocacy, and so over there first we emphasize more on looking for possibility of having a meetings with the high-level delegations. With the high-level delegations, my experience was that with some very high-profile leaders, so it would be only few seconds of meeting with them, and then you just try to give your briefing paper to them, and then hoping that they would read your briefing paper, such as with the Nancy Pelosi, and she was just walking. So it's a huge hall that thousands of people just walk from one conference room to another conference room. So you just grab the opportunity that you see in front of you. So as soon as I met her, I said that I'm here for Tibet, and then she responded by saying that Tashi Delek, and then I tried to hand over a briefing paper to her. So that was one case. But then with the case of another high-level is the gentleman over there is the Environment Minister of India. With him, I think I would say that my understanding was that India should be the one who has a really good understanding of whole political situation and environment situation of Tibet as well. So Shri Bhupendra Yadav, he has come to the India pavilion, and then I went and said that I'm Lobsang and this is our briefing paper. He seemed very happy, and he was like full of smiling on his face, and because there were like lots of people watching him and lots of photographers and all. And then as soon as I mentioned saying that I'm here for Tibet, his whole expression changed. And that kept me wondering, I mean, why, his expression changed, and he seemed very happy, and then suddenly, he became very serious, and then he just folded our briefing paper and then gave it to the his secretary. And so that was, I think, another kind of experience that we encounter at such big events as well. And another example that I would like to share over here is our meetings with the delegations from Bangladesh. And so me and one of our colleagues, we went to the Bangladesh pavilion, because Brahmaputra flows from Tibet, then in India, and then in Bangladesh as well. So we wanted to highlight about that. And then as soon as we entered that pavilion, so there was this one gentleman over there. As soon as he saw us, he started, maybe he was busy, but started acting busy in a phone, and he didn't even give eye contact to us. So there was this one lady just next to him, and then we started talking to her, and so she said that maybe you can wait for a few seconds because sir is busy in a phone. We waited, and he was continuously talking in a phone. Then she went to inform the sir, saying that sir, I think these ladies would like to talk to you. And he didn't speak in English. He spoke in their own language, saying, and then she said that sir is busy, maybe you can come later. And then he didn't even say hi, hello, forget about other things. And then, he didn't give eye contact with us as well. And he said in their own language, saying that I'm busy, maybe you can come later. And then when we just exit the room, and he went inside. So I don't know, I mean, this is kind of a situation that we encounter, and so it depends how we analyze and find a conclusion from that. But then, not all high-level delegations are like that, because I think we really had a really productive discussion with the Czech delegations and from Scottish Parliament. And the above one, the gentleman over the right is a Thomas Pojar. He is the Czech Prime Minister's Foreign and Security Advisor. And the left one over there is Martin Busek. He's a really I would say Friends of Tibet from Czech Republic, and he organized our discussion meeting with him, and then we had a really long discussion, and then he asked lots about not only the environment but then about other political issues of Tibet as well. And so one positive thing I think he said during the meeting was that he said that my understanding is right now especially in the European Union, is that there is a change of EU members' perception on China, and because of the whole COVID. And earlier, the European Union members kind of had a favorable, perception or understanding of China. So now he says that there is a change of that whole understanding, which could be I would say, good opportunity for us. And then we had also really long meeting with Chris Law. And so with Chris Law, he's a Scottish member of Parliament, and he said that his interest of seeking for independence for the Scotland grew when he was here in Dharamshala. So when he came to know about whole Tibet issue, and so with him we were saying that is there any possibility of having a space in whole COP7 meetings for the stateless people. So he said that he would like to explore more on that. And then I think the other opportunity for what we had was to build a relation with the whole civil society, and also the I would say it's more of a grassroots campaign, grassroots and lobbying as well, and then meeting the ICMOT. ICMOT is based in Nepal, and they do lots of work on whole Himalaya belt in terms of water, and these issues. But there is an interesting story on the ICMOT as well, because from my experience, many of the Tibetans have been trying to apply for at least for internship or a job at ICMOT in Nepal, but they have never accepted any Tibetan in their organization, and so that's the one situation over there. And then I think we also attended another discussion organized by the ICMOT, the one over Cares Fair, and me and Kinzum. So you could see the panelists over there. So the panelists from the left is from Pakistan, then Nepal, and from India. And it's also because I think before going to the COP, we thought that maybe we should approach more to the downstream countries and build an ally with them. But then with the downstream countries, they had a discussion specifically on Brahmaputra and Indus River as well. But they never mentioned anything on the upstream, what is happening. So they kind of, it's like you kind of lost your memory. It's like, so they haven't mentioned anything about what is happening in upstream, which is in Tibet. And so then we asked about saying that you talk about Brahmaputra, you talk about Indus River. Yes, there are lots of problems, but then because of what happening on the upstream of the whole these rivers, because of the damming, the climate change, has a definitely impact on the downstream countries as well. And they refuse to answer that question. They refuse to answer that question. But then interesting is that once the panel discussion got over, then there were like two researcher from Nepal came to us and saying that, oh, I have a friend, I have lots of friends in Nepal. But then I was like, you were on the panel, right? So you know the real situation, but you decided to remain silent when you had a, stage. And then once the whole panel discussion got over, everyone got dispersed, then you come to me and say that I have a Tibetan friends. So I think it's like very difficult for me to, how do we say, it's like very difficult to understand, how do we perceive on that? Maybe is it because of their own government's policy on Tibet, or is it just that, they prefer not to say because thinking that they have a more interest, benefits being silent on the Tibet? So I think these things nowadays, I keep thinking on that. And then the other I think opportunity that we have is whenever there is any event that's discussed on human rights or climate change, our delegates, we always ask questions, and we know that even if we ask questions, they don't respond. Sometimes they don't respond, but that's okay. So they are like lots of people on the stage, and at least the audience would know your story, right? So that was our I think aim, and then we would always ask questions about in terms of sorry. In terms of climate justice and human rights. And this panel discussion was really a great one because it was held by International Court of Justice, Amnesty International, and Greenpeace. And Chuki asked about human rights violation that is happening, and then how can we have a climate justice when there is a human rights violation happening inside Tibet. And then they really responded saying that we understand the human rights situation inside Tibet. And so I think so that always felt really, really positive positive about that. And then we also got 3, I think, like speaking slot during the COP meeting. And so all this, I think the chances that we got were because of the connections that we built many years before. And so in these 3 panel discussions that we could join, we raised about the occupation and then the cases of Tibetan nomads inside at the forced relocation of Tibetan nomads, and then in terms of importance of human rights, and then representation, and also about the civic space and climate justice at the event. And I think so like for me, my personal experience was that I feel like little satisfied when we get a platform. So I think sometimes these things are quite important over there. So finally, I would like to talk about the challenges that we faced, and then how can we improve in our future work. The challenges, the first challenge that we faced was in terms of the restrictions of civic space at the Egypt. So it was like my first time in Egypt, and so in terms of civic space or freedom or freedom of speech, we were terrified because we were like a delegation of 5 women, and I would say that in terms of our relation with the hotel or with the Egyptian officers over there, wherever we go, they would just ask our passports, and they would just take the photos. And so when we were at the hotel, so whenever we travel from hotel to the venue, our plain clothed police officer would come in our taxi, but he would not explain anything about why he's coming, but he would just come inside the in the taxi, and then he would ask our names and where we are from, and then take pictures. And so we just gave up not asking questions why you are doing that. We were like, okay. So that was there. And then in terms of also, I think the kind of human rights violations that's happening in Egypt as well. So it was very strict, and many people were not feel safe. And Egyptian government they had their own COP27 official app. So everyone thought that we can use that app to see the various events that we can attend. And then later on, many of the human rights groups saying that this app is not safe. So we just had to delete that app. And also I think it was really high cost of attending COP27. The hotels were so expensive. It was so expensive. The taxes were so expensive. And so I felt that, I felt there is a less presence of people from the Asian countries. So that could be one reason where we don't see much of the global south in whole COP meetings. And then usually at the COP, so there is this two different venue. One is the green zone and the other one is the blue zone. Blue zone is the official venue where you get the accreditation, and then you go and you could attend some of the events. Whereas the green zone is for the civil society area where you don't have to have accreditation or a pass to enter the venue. But this year the Egyptian government, they made us to apply for the green zone, and we got the permit only in the second week when we were just decided to leave the Egypt. So I think this is the kind of another situation that we faced. And then many climate activists also said that there is always a presence of plainclothes police officer in every meeting, and then documenting the whole proceedings. So many human rights activists raised about that. And then in terms of another challenge that we faced was we couldn't get any international media coverage on our delegation or specifically on Tibet issue. Though, I mean, Tibetan media, yes, they did cover a lot, but then we couldn't get any connection or media coverage from the international media this time. And then social media, I think we focus a lot on social media, but then the problem with us is that we have 5 people in a venue, and from morning we go to the venue, and from there we find where we have to go and then decide which are the events that we want to attend. And then you go, you meet, and then you give briefing, and then at the end of the day we have to make our own social media postings and taking a photo, making a video. So it was like, I felt that it's very exhausting, because I mean we have to do everything, and so that was very exhausting. And so we also thought that maybe if we could hire one special, social media handler person who would just take all the information and share in social media, that would make our work much easier. And then in terms of logistic, as I shared earlier, was terrible. I mean, I could say that person over there, they don't, even at the hotels, we stayed in the cheapest hotel, but it looked from Indians' perspective, it looked like a 5-star, but we booked the cheapest. But the person who work at the hotels, they don't speak English well, so every time they would say that you haven't paid, you have to pay again and again. So it was another nightmare that we had to face during all this other work that we had to do. And then in terms of talking points, yes, we had a briefing paper over there, but then at the COP27, especially at the official venue, I felt like many of the groups, they would not highlight specifically on the countries. So it was like very general in terms of loss of damage and in terms of finance for the climate mitigation and adaptation as well. So with that, I felt that, maybe, they should be also more focused on how we can also align with that and then bring the case of Tibet so that the others can also become more familiar with what we are speaking. And then the last challenge I would say that we faced was that people were not, climate activists were not allowed to hold any protest at the Egypt. So they were like inside the official zone, so they would give a specific area where you can protest. In that protest, before doing any protest, you have to get a permission from the Egyptian government. And during the protest, you can't carry any national flag, you can't do naming and shaming. So that was, I think, the thing that, and we couldn't do much as we did in Glasgow. So I think that was another challenge that we faced. So in terms of future, I think plan, I think collaboration is really important, and also collaboration among the Tibet groups with the Tibetan government in exile and the Tibetan NGOs as well, and then also with the collaboration with the other environment NGOs or environment groups are really important. And then with the whole Tibet movement, we felt that everyone is doing lots of work on advocacy at the high level, but I feel that we should also focus more on grassroots movement and trying to meet people person to person and then face to face, and then build a relation, build a network, because with the Tibet movement, everyone says that the most of the Tibet supporters are they are like the aged ones. So we need more of a younger Tibet support groups, friends of Tibet as such. So this can only achieve if we have a grassroots movement. So I think even with the case of Tibet climate issues, I think grassroots movement should be focus a lot, and then not only focusing on the COP meetings, but then identifying other environment forums like COP15, which will be happening in December this year at Canada, and then UN Water Conference will be held in New York in March. I think March 23rd to 24th. So if Tibet groups can also attend these events, that could also help to highlight the Tibet issue. and then specific talking points with the specific focusing on groups and groups who are focusing on human rights or climate justice or environment defenders. So in terms of our briefing papers, we also focused on maybe we need to have a UN language in our briefing papers, and then relate with that, and then make bring the whole Tibet issue in the global discussion at the language that they use in terms of human rights and climate justice, that they focus. And then I feel that finally maybe I think at the COP meetings or any UN or global climate discussions, or any if a Tibetan government's representative, official representative, maybe a minister, a Kalun, or if a Tibetan MP can also attend these conferences, and then if they could give a presentation or talk, so that could also maybe that might also highlight and draw media attention. And so environment defender has been also really a huge focus at the COP meetings, and this year we haven't focused much on environment defenders inside Tibet. So I think in the next time we can highlight a few of the environment defenders from Tibet, and then try to I think align or try to build a network with those organizations which also focused on environment defenders all around the world. So I think these are my experiences, and maybe my suggestions for the future work. So thank you so much for your attention.
Firstly, thank you so much for representing on behalf of Tibetan peoples who are kind of like stateless and being through a lot of challenges, but taking that as kind of like opportunities. You dare not to share all of like Tibetan stories being colonized. Thank you so much. And without taking much time, now we have like almost like 10 minutes of question answer session. So if any one of you have any questions to ask, kindly please take the opportunity.
I'm just curious, if you're in a situation like that, do you connect with other stateless people from all over the world are facing similar difficulties, I guess, and do you connect, and do you inspire each other, or I don't know what you can do like that? Does it help to widen your view?
Yeah, I think I would not say stateless people, but then when we go and meet people one-to-one, what we experienced, but there were like many individuals who would come and say that, so thank you so much for sharing the story of Tibet, and whatever you say is exactly happening in my country as well. And so I share solidarity with them, with you as well. So they express a lot about that, especially we met a few students from Pakistan as well. So we focused on the human rights, and so they share that they say not in front of the official discussion, official delegates, but then just we just went a little bit far from the official pavilion and to discuss openly. So they expressed that, and then I also discussed, met a guy from Hawaii, and he said that I can understand because of the not having official representation, and so he expressed that. And so I would say that people from Africa, they would also feel related with the Tibet issue as such, and so people express their solidarity. And so from my understanding is that we need more representation or more visibility of people talking about Tibet. And if we don't speak, then I think eventually maybe there is a danger of people forgetting about Tibet. So, but then my positive experience of COP27 is that if we have a Tibetans, or if we have anyone who speak on Tibet, there are people who are ready to listen, and there are people who are ready to learn as well, and then they share similar experience, and then in the future maybe possibility of having a collaboration or supporting each other, and then helping each other. So that I felt during my stay at the COP27.
Very lovely talk. I mean, Tibet is so important globally. Was there anyone talking about the effects of, I mean, anyone from anywhere basically, including anyone from the Chinese side, talking about what is happening in Tibet and the effects of the climate change on the whole of Asia, really? I mean, in terms of actually highlighting, I guess it's a very political place, but also highlighting some of the predictions and those kind of things. Was there anything about that you came across?
I would say from my 3 times of COP experience, I've not seen anyone talking about Tibet or Tibetan Plateau, the environment.
Frost or any of these things?
Anyone, not a single person would be there to talk about Tibet. There were panel discussions on permafrost, there were panel discussions on damming, but nobody does. And so in that case, we thought that, downstream nations are more related with the Tibet. So we attended their discussions and hoping that they would mention, but they don't. So that's why, my thing is that if Tibet delegations don't go at the COP meetings, nobody will be speaking on Tibet. Not a single one.
Was there any country discussing on China rather than on Tibet?
There was so we went to one of the Chinese government's organized panel discussion. So every country's other than their official heads of the delegation or the official leaders discussing on the doing the negotiation at the closed door meetings. So every country has their own official pavilions where they would organize discussions over there. And the Chinese government has also organized one panel discussion in terms of, green energy or hydropower as such. And we attended that, and it was funny because I think they haven't left a space for people to ask questions. As soon there were like few delegations, and it was very interesting to see because there was this one guy, white guy from some, I would not mention the country, but I think a European country, and he was on the podium speaking about how great China is, and I would love to come back to Beijing and work, and China is the example that everyone has to follow. And then the Chinese government also spoke, and then IMF leader was also there in terms of expressing how China is doing wonderfully in terms of environment conservation. But then we thought that maybe if there is a Q&A session, we would ask questions, but then they didn't give us space or time for the audience to ask questions. So even over that side, they would not mention the Tibet, and the Chinese government, their official pavilion has lots of information in terms of hydropower, or they have a report and anything, but not much mention on Tibet. But they did highlight a bit on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau. That's the term that they used, and then talk about the emphasis on big dams. But it was just on the booklet, but no one would just go there and speak about that. Yeah.
Is it possible to access the briefing paper that you wrote?
Yeah, sure.
Where can I find it?
If you can give me your email,
Yes, I would do.
Sure.
And I also have a question, if you maybe could go back to it. It's written that 1.3 billion people depend on water, it's like the downstream, I understood, but then also 4 billion people depend on the agriculture of it. I think like this is a really big point of leverage to say to the world population of the world. And I don't understand these 4 billion people, what the agriculture, what is it? What kind of agriculture is it?
I think when with specifically on the downstream countries, like suppose if we focused on the Brahmaputra as well, right? So there are people specifically from India, from Assam. So they are dependent on water for their own agriculture, and then people from Bangladesh as well for farming and maybe growing rice so I think these are the issues. And then from another big major river that we have is the Mekong River, and then Mekong River flows from Tibet and then Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam. So all these countries are, many of the people from this region are also dependent on the water, the Mekong River that flows from Tibet. So I think, so these are the issues that we try to highlight, saying that it's not only about Tibet, but also about 1.9 billion Asian populations are dependent on the food and water security, on the water that flows from Tibet.
If I may, there's another question also, but I don't want to take.
Okay.
Yes, okay. For next year, the next COP28, what is your wish for it? Like, what would be your ideal COP? What would you like for the delegation from Tibet?
Next year's COP would be happening in Dubai, right? So so it would be another, I think, a big hurdle. And if I'm not wrong, maybe my fellow Tibetans can, answer that. I heard that in Dubai the Tibetan yellow passport is not. They don't recognize that.
Yeah.
So any Tibetan who has the yellow travel document that has been issued by the Indian government won't be able to attend the next COP28 meeting in Dubai. But then we have Tibetans who have like Indian passport or who live outside India, so they could I think attend. But then also it's like very difficult. Specifically, I'm sure Dubai would be also very expensive, and so human resource and then funding is also a big problem for the Tibetan NGOs, and also I guess with the Tibetan government in exile. And so this year 5 Tibetan NGOs came, 5 Tibet groups including the CTA came together. So next year I hope that there would be more Tibet groups coming together, and we need more of human resource and then funding. And so as I said earlier, I think when we were at the Glasgow, so we have like 5 delegations inside the COP, but then we have lots of our staff working outside the COP, contacting with all the media person, arranging all the logistics. So when we were at the Egypt, so we were just left there by ourselves. So in terms of security, that was quite risky. So I think in next year at the Dubai, going there by yourself, not having any support from outside the venue is sometimes quite scary. And then honestly speaking, the whole COP meeting, attending over there is very, very, very exhausting. For 3 days at the COP venue, we did eat lunch. One, because the venues are so big that it's so difficult to find where are the cafes, and if you find a cafe, there is hundreds of people lining up for the the food, and so it's very, very exhausting. So the venues are so difficult to find, and I'm really bad with the directions. So once I enter, I don't know where to exit. So it's like very, very, I would say, honestly speaking, very exhausting experience. And the second is that every year I think most of us could attend only the first week, because to attend a UN COP meetings, you have to have accreditation, a pass to enter the official. So we are not eligible to apply directly to the UN of accreditation. So we have a connection with universities or our friends, organizations. So they provide the accreditation to us, And so I feel grateful if they give us accreditation only for 1 week. Sometimes, they would, luckily, sometimes, they would give for 2 weeks, but otherwise the NGOs, they said that you take the 1 week accreditation, I'm going to give the second week to someone else. So that's why most of the time we were not able to be there on the whole 2 week meeting. But then I feel that if we could stay whole 2 week, then there is a more possibility of having us more discussion and more meetings at the COP meeting. But then, I think that COP is very important where you need a collaboration. You can't go as an individual, go over there and then do your advocacy. It's so exhausting. And so I think you feel sometimes feel homesick, not liking the food. And then being there alone, it's like a really, I would say, very exhausting experience. So if you have groups of people coming together and then working together and being there together for the whole 1 week or the 2 week really, really helps and gives us energy to do a better job. Sorry, I forgot the question.
No, I think it answered it. It's
Now I remember.
28,
Yeah.
yes, the challenges and the
Yeah.
difficulties, but what would be ideal to stay for 2 weeks, to have more resources also.
Yeah.
Yes, no, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. And then hopefully next year, maybe I think this year Tibetan Tibetan Parliament in exile, our members of Parliament, they focused a lot on importance of climate issue. They discuss a lot at the Parliament. So maybe if in future if they can also come and attend and do the advocacy, that would be also great.
Yeah, I have a question. Since you have experience of attending, I think 3 years experience of attending the COP, and COP has been there. I think looking at the 28th coming up, so it's a long kind of it's been happening every year. I want to ask how serious is the world leaders are in terms of this COP meeting, because what we hear, our source is only through the media. So media are, as you know, it's kind of biased. So you have been there for last 3 years. You have seen and experienced the ground reality, and
not entirely.
few of your experience, just you have shared. It's very the room rents are exorbitant. The marginalized, the weaker people cannot attend. So I think the main victim of this environment is the weaker section of the society. The higher society, the elite people, they have all the accommodation, everything ready. Right? So how can they, build upon the future without having the representative from these people? Because looking at the experience that you shared, it's been shut down to those weaker people, and it's just just a thought. It's been going on for 27 times, and it's heading. What do you think? Where it's heading? Is it heading in the right direction, or what is your experience?
I don't know. I think there is. I think maybe we can have two different school of thought. One would saying that it's just a greenwashing, where Greta Thunberg says blah blah. And because I think it's the rich countries who, China and India and the US, they are the major polluter, and so the richer countries should have make more commitment in terms of decarbonizing or creating net zero, the big fancy terms which common people doesn't understand. So they have all the the ambitions and. So that's there, and then I think to some extent sometimes I feel that now the whole global community understands the critical situation of whole climate crisis. Everyone is facing a lot, and at the COP27 all the global leaders focus so much on the Pakistan, the recent flood that Pakistan had to face. And so in a way I think everyone, not even the world leaders, but the civil society communities, the young generations and climate activists are coming, and they are pressuring the world leaders to make a concrete I would say, steps. And in that case, I think this year the climate activists are saying that one positive outcome of COP27 was there, where the richer countries, they agreed to give more money or more funding for the loss and damage. Loss and damage is where you have a loss of damage because of the climate disasters. So the richer countries agree to give more funding on that. So I think that could be one positive step. Especially I think Denmark, Sweden and Scotland, they really agree to spend more money on loss and damage. And yes, Dr. Name, you also true in terms of indigenous community and local communities as such, where they don't have, they are the ones who get most affected by the climate disasters, but then it's the richer countries who do all the pollution. And so I think in a positive way, maybe the people are pushing and slowly, yes, whatever they are doing is not enough because we can see from China as well. China is blaming the rich countries for polluting, but China also continues to invest a lot on coal. And so I think that's there. But then what we say is that hope. There is a hope that slowly maybe if the civil society, common people, and NGOs, and then some good leaders, they can initially take good steps in the future. But then whatever the world leaders agree to do is not enough. That's everyone says. It's not enough. There should be more push and more concrete action. I think that's what I would like to say. But then with the case of Tibet, my understanding is that I feel that the Chinese occupation of Tibet leads to the mismanagement of whole climate disaster inside Tibet. So I think I personally feel that with the Tibetans we have a much bigger mission, or the larger mission ahead, because for me climate, or it is not only the issue of human rights, it's more much more about it's more about the colonization, the occupation. So I think we have a more bigger vision and more challenges ahead. And because with the Chinese government's policy decision-making policies, we can see the case of Tibetan nomads. More than 2 million Tibetan nomads have been removed from the grassland, and where we say that the Tibetans are not included in the whole climate policy making inside Tibet. So it's a big challenge, and but then hopefully near future things will improve slowly.
I'd like to call upon our director, Mr. Otenla, to say some few words. And
Okay, so first of all, Dr. Lobsang Yangtso, thank you so much for humbly accepting this invitation, and also congratulations to you and your team for successfully going to the COP27. And I think we have all Tibetan and friends of Tibetan all around the world have witnessed that the level of inputs that you have been doing, and congratulations for that. And as you all have witnessed, this museum, the environment issue is very important for this museum as well, because we already have, apart from in this 10 gallery, one of the main gallery is on the environment section. So in the, of course, not only from the museum point of view, but also from the commitment that His Holiness is keeping. He has made 4 commitments. Out of that, the 3rd commitment is on the fragile environment of Tibet, protecting and talking about the fragile environment of Tibet, and also the culture of Tibet. So preserving this is his main commitment. So I'm very happy to host Dr. Yangtso here, and also in the near future, the Tibet Museum is planning to co-host an exhibition in one of the Singapore-based museum, and they recently visited here, and their founder Jaya, he was planning Rise of Asia in the exhibition theme is Rise of Asia in Singapore, and he said that the beginning of this Rise of Asia, he want to feature Tibet. And I asked him why Tibet. He want to feature why Tibet as the beginning of this the museum. Why not India? Because India has very long civilization, and the Buddhism spread from India across the Southeast Asia. And he simply said, the 11 rivers that originate from Tibet, it's the main bedrock from where all the great civilization came. And that's why he want to tribute this museum, starting with Tibet as the main starting theme. So I think from there onward, we can understand the importance of the plateau of Tibet. And also thank you, Dr. Lobsang Yangtso, for sharing your experience. Few of them are really transparent experience, and I believe few experiences are really traumatizing, and I must say it is same with all the Tibetan, because as she mentioned, next year it's in Dubai, so we cannot go there because of the yellow the traveling document that we have. So it's a part and parcel, means wherever we go we have this stateless. So in a way we try to identify, or we try to preserve our own identity through this stateless norm, saying that we have our own country. So if we can easily assimilate and opted for any of the independent like India, we can easily adopt that. But we opted not to take that citizenship. So I think I must say, don't get disheartened. You are doing great, and thank you so much. And we host this the Tibet Talk Series every fortnightly. So next month, in the first half of the next month, we are again hosting one talk series. So please stay tuned in our the social media. We'll update you, and we will now break for
So I just, as a token of appreciation to our guest speaker today, I would like to, request our director to offer a small gift.
Yes, please give a big round of applause to Dr. Thank you.